If you knew me before, you wouldn't even look my way. If I had the nerve to speak, you wouldn't hear what I say. Time has come and gone so fast, we're not who we used to be.
And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I'm here with my dear Becka. Becka, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, full disclosure, we're in a relationship. And full disclosure of that is because I don't want people thinking that you're just on here because you're my girlfriend.
Right.
You actually have some profound knowledge about the death industry that we don't normally talk about.
Right.
Yet is so important in terms of planning, in terms of helping.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get started in the funeral industry in the beginning?
So, half my life I was a veterinary nurse, and decided that after 15 years of taking care of animals, I was burnt out and wanted a change. So I looked on Craigslist and saw this job for this company needing transportation folks to go to where people die, whether it's the hospital or their homes, or I also did medical examiner calls as well. And I applied, and they're like, well, if you can pass a drug test, you start in Monday, and this was a Friday. So I passed and started and went into a very extensive 2-week training program. And my very first call was a 400-pound gentleman up in a morgue at OHSU. And that was my first time ever touching somebody who had passed away that wasn't, properly embalmed or, bathed or whatever. And that was my first experience with that.
So as you transition into sort of that career path
Mm-hmm.
and you start sort of experiencing everything sort of involved with that, how much was that adjustment period? Did you adjust to being around dead people quickly, or did it take you some time to go, okay, I can?
You kind of had to. My third day on the job, I went on a call for a 15-story jumper. And I had never, I mean, you see in movies and stuff, like in horror movies where there's blood and guts, or like, somebody, you're seeing an autopsy being done on TV. That doesn't prepare you for anything that you are about to see. And walking through this scene and just seeing pieces, and they're like, oh yeah, we need everything picked up. So my legs and my hands were just shaking through this whole process and stuff. And doing the transportation, you also took these folks to funeral homes after hours, places in the dark that you've never been to before, and you're surrounded by other people who have passed away, because you're going into the climate controlled room at that funeral home, and you're having to figure out, if you haven't been there before, you're having to figure out what you're supposed to do. There could be alarm panels in a different room you don't know of. There's a light switch up at the top of a hallway, that you don't know is there. So you're filling around, and you're still surrounded by people who have passed away. So you get used to it very quickly. And the things that you see and smell and hear and all of that, yeah, you get used to it very quickly.
And what I can recount from the conversations that you and I have had off the podcast
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of the transportation side is kind of organized chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you manage the organized chaos piece of that? Because it's one of those industries where, based on how humans evolve,
Right.
there will always be a need.
Yeah. That's true. Well, those of us who are in the industry and have been in the industry will tell you that it's kind of Not necessarily a claim to fame, but the crazier the call, the better you feel more accomplished because you might have um, somebody in like a situation where you have to put your heads together and figure out how quickly and um, cleanly can we get this person out of this situation. And I forgot what was the question again. Sorry.
No, like, how did you manage the organized chaos of transportation?
I don't I don't know because like sometimes you would be picking up for this particular funeral home and taking them to this funeral home and then picking up this person and going to this funeral home. So you just had to um hang on to just like your organizational skills to remember, okay, this person needs to go here, this person needs to go here, stuff like that. And I have a pretty good memory and am able to, hang on to that skill, I guess.
Yeah.
And just the chaos in general just makes things all the more, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily worth it, but just you just feel more accomplished when you're able to get people out of those situations and those locations and stuff.
Because there's a customer service component to that
Mm-hmm.
that I know you've talked about on various occasions. Um, because you're working with people who have just lost somebody
Right.
and they're in this grief, there is a different approach to how you treat people
Absolutely.
because of the trauma involved
Yeah.
every time they come through your doors.
Right. So whenever I would train somebody to do what I do, I would tell them, go into a room and be a few notches lower than the family. So if you go into the room and the family is drinking, they're partying, they're laughing, they're joking, um, don't walk into a room and instantly do that too, but don't stand there so still and so rigid that you come across more cold and calculated versus, having empathy and, stuff like that. If people are laughing and smiling and having a good time, it's okay to smile. It's totally okay. So the key point to that is just read the room. If you have a family that's sitting over on the couch and they're just, holding each other and just crying and just not even watching what you're doing, just continue doing what you're doing. You don't need to um get them involved in a conversation, just let them have their moment pretty much.
Yeah, because I almost liken it to interrupting their grief process.
Exactly.
And if you don't allow them to grieve in their own way, it could cause a delay in their ability to grieve.
Yeah. I've been on calls where the family is in all out brawls, screaming matches, fist fighting out in the front yard. Um, People so drunk or strung out or just completely beside themselves in their grief. You just stick to professionalism and just go in, do the job as quickly and um, as caringly and dignifyingly and respectfully as possible.
And so you were working with the company doing the transportation piece.
hmm
What made you do what prompted you to make the decision to go on the cremation side of things?
Um, well, working with that particular company, I got moved over into helping on the pet crematory side and running that particular um, area of the company. And with that experience of cremating and doing all of that, once that company was depleted, I guess. This new funeral home that I work for, I moved into that position, still doing transportation, still doing cremations, but on the human side. And I also started doing cosmetizing and dressing and casketing as well. So I mean, I've dressed a 600-pound man by myself before, and you learn all the tricks of the trade and figure out how to do stuff all by yourself.
Yeah.
You get strong very fast.
And I've seen the facility you work in.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I know a lot of people might be curious about is the process itself.
Okay.
So when a person is scheduled for cremation,
Hmm.
is the prep work different than if they were doing a burial?
Yes and no, because we do have different forms of what happens before somebody is cremated or a burial. So we have what's called a direct cremation, where when somebody comes into our care, if family doesn't want to do a viewing, they don't want anything else. They just want just straight cremation, period. Nothing as far as preparation
Yeah.
happens. We don't embalm them. We don't do any kind of setting their features, or we close the eyes, close the mouth. We don't do any like type of bathing or anything. They just get cremated. For burial, you have direct burial, where somebody just goes into the casket and they go to the cemetery and be buried. But you also have ones that are being embalmed. They're fully dressed. They're full services, full viewings, full everything. Sometimes we'll have a service there at the funeral home. Sometimes families want to have it at a church. Sometimes families want their loved one to come home for a few days, and they have this huge all-out family party. So it's just different. It's every part of it is different. It's all literally what the family wants. We've had some interesting requests from loved ones, and even from the person who passed away themselves. They'll come in and do pre-arrangements, and they'll say, I want to do this. This is how I want it. I don't care what you say. You pretty much have to have to do it to an extent. So, but
For those of you watching, not understanding what's going on, I'm chuckling not because of the conversation, but because my little Finn is freaking out because a dog just walked by.
so we're being very serious.
Finn, come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Calm down. Come here. Come here. It's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, so in terms of like the crematory itself, how hot does it have to be to get the cremation done?
So it has to get to at least 1600. That's when the machine's flame turns on. And depending on the when that cremation is being done, because you can have several people in a day that you're cremating, and you might have somebody at the end of the day that's not very large in stature, but they could potentially get up to like 2100 degrees, and that we call is high temping. They shouldn't get to 2100 degrees, but sometimes with size they can. So,
And that's going to be dependent on the size of the person, right? Because you control the flames, but then at some point, I would imagine the body itself kind of catches fire, right?
yeah.
And one of the things that you've talked about on a few occasions that I've been waiting to ask this question.
Uh-oh.
It's not really an uh-oh, it's just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about how many times you have to turn them. Like, what do you mean when you say you have to turn to somebody?
So, it is called repositioning.
Okay, reposition.
Repositioning, yes. So, when somebody gets placed into the retort, you can place them and then just set the machine, turn it on, leave them be. But sometimes I do reposition folks so that the process goes a little faster. Um, because the um like their back, because they, they're laying on the hearth of the retort, and they're, being cremated and stuff. But sometimes you have pieces that they're laying on, whether it's cardboard or tissue and stuff like that. So repositioning just helps to move things around in the machine so that you can get a more complete burn. So sorry for my terminology.
You're fine. I'm sorry for Finn. Uh, so in terms of like the process itself, right?
Mhm.
Have you noticed in the last few years that how do you prefer to let's back up for a second. So in the industry I work in,
Uh-huh.
they're very picky about what you call people that are clients or participants.
Mhm.
How does the death industry identify the people who have been deceased who come through for the services that you offer?
They're called decedents, or they're called loved ones. Um, Depending on, in what way we're talking about them, I guess. So, if I'm talking to, if I go on a call and I'm talking to a family, I don't say decedent. I will call that person by their first name, or if I'm talking to, their son or daughter, I will say your mom, or I would, your dad or your grandpa. I like to personalize the moment, but um or if I go to a hospital, I'll tell the staff there, "I'm here to pick up a person who's passed away, in your morgue."
And I appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
like, now that I have that information, I can ask that follow-up question.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that the decedents along the way have increased in terms of weight and size? Like, are we as an American culture, as somebody who works with people who are
Mhm.
deceased, are you finding more and more people are 250 plus or 350 plus? Just
No.
curious.
Yeah, no. I we take care of all sizes, all ages, all ethnicities, all religious backgrounds. It definitely is a mix of weight. And I couldn't say that people who are older, or people who are middle-aged, or people in their 20s or 30s, or even younger, that there's, higher weights in those different, age brackets, I guess.
And I appreciate that because I struggle sometimes with the narrative that you see in the media that
Mhm.
we as a culture are getting fatter.
Right,
But if that's not necessarily the case,
right,
that's just what we're being spoon-fed.
right.
It's good to have that barometer of somebody that deals with a lot of people in their last
Mhm.
moments to see if that's actually legit or not.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when your heart is done, it's done, regardless of how much you weigh. I mean, you could be, a triathlete, and have an instant heart attack during your training moments. You could be, a teenager playing football and get hit just in the right spot, and but when your heart is done, that's it. So
And then at the same time, though, I recognize that you do get some people that are significantly overweight.
yeah.
Does that impact the amount of time it takes for the cremation process?
Yes. And it's interesting because men and versus women kind of cremate differently too. So if I had the choice, I would cremate a woman who's larger in stature first before I would cremate a man larger in stature, because somehow their tissue burns differently or cremates differently. And I for somebody who's larger in stature, I would slow down the process, because too much fat burns hotter than just regular muscle and bone. So sometimes I will have the cremation process start, and then I'll turn the flame off, so that they're naturally just taking care of it themselves. Because um, fat can, literally ignite like gasoline if you aren't doing the process properly.
And then I'm curious too, because like once the process is all said and done,
Hmm.
there is this myth out there that it's just a pile of ashes that remain. Now, there's always something that's remaining that you have to sort of take an additional step to make sure that it's all cremated remains,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. So once everything is done, you still have the bone that's there. All the tissue and blood and hair and all of that is gone. What you have left is cremated bone and or implants. Sometimes like teeth, like the false teeth, or like not ceramic, but
Like the mercury, or not mercury, but the amalgam filling.
yeah. So metal usually comes back. False teeth, not dentures, but when they're like ceramic or the hard material. I don't know what it's called. Sorry.
Yeah, so like if you have like an implant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those usually don't burn down. Um, but what we do is we sweep out the remainder bone. So we get a lot of question. Well, what size? I mean, they were well over. They were larger in stature. Should I get a really big urn to put them in because they were big? All of that extra stuff is gone. All you have is the skeletal remains. So somebody who was 500 pounds versus somebody who was 100 pounds, you're probably going to have the same amount of ash come back um, from them. Usually the only difference, though, is age because you lose bone density as you get older. So somebody who is 25 years old, I'm going to have way more return after those bones are what we call pulverized. We put them in a machine and the machine grinds them down to the ash or the the gritty stuff. And but somebody who is like 60s, 70s, 80s, I'm not going to get as much back because of their bone density.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And then we've had conversations off the air too about how important planning and preparation is.
absolutely.
Because you've talked to me about stories of when things go wrong and just how little rights somebody might have
Right.
if they don't plan for what happens after you die.
Right. And we did talk about common law this last week.
Yeah.
There is no common law. So a couple who has been together, for 20 plus years, neither one of them has any rights to make any decision after that person, their loved one passes away. And so um or like having a power of attorney, for somebody who's passed away, if it doesn't say that it includes after death, you don't have any say if you have power of attorney for taking care of somebody. Um, but
Can we pause there for a second?
yeah.
Because I think that's important to acknowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because this is a scenario I see playing out, right? You have a power of attorney for your loved one. You're
Mm-hmm.
both sort of elderly. You don't include that. And you're the person that you have been solely responsible for taking care of passes.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have no rights in the decisions
Nothing.
of what happens with your loved one after you die.
Right.
So the ramifications are huge if you don't have this one piece of paper, right?
Right. So that particular person's like official next of kin can sign paperwork giving you the right to make those decisions. But sometimes after your loved one passes away, attitudes of, for other people that are involved might change. Be like, no, you've been with them for 20 years and you've had this power of attorney. Well, now they're gone. Let me tell you now, I really didn't like you from the beginning, so you don't have any say anymore because I'm next of kin. So definitely you want to make sure at any point that who has the right to make those decisions literally has those rights, and it won't get taken away from them once you pass away.
Because I'm sure you've seen those kind of interesting dynamics
Hmm.
and how much damage it does to the family and the grieving process.
Yeah. I mean, even because children of somebody who passed away, they all have equal rights. If if that person wasn't married, or if their folks aren't alive anymore, they don't have any kids, stuff like that, that would go to siblings. If like siblings clash with each other and stuff, that could potentially be an issue and stuff. Families stuck in court trying to figure out what's gonna happen with their loved ones' cremated remains. Um, it's just it gets messy. It really does. It gets messy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that also limits your ability to even question what's going on, right? Because as the funeral home will say, if you're not on that power of attorney, I can't tell you anything.
Or if you're not next of kin, a next
Yeah.
a next of kin can say, "I don't want you talking to anybody else but me. I don't want you giving out any information. I don't want you telling anybody else any of that," and they absolutely 100% have that right.
Is there a standard order when it comes to next of kin?
Mhm.
Like spouse, siblings,
Uh-huh.
things like that?
Usually it starts with spouse. And then if you have children over the age of 18, then it goes to them. If you don't have children or they're under the age of 18 and you aren't married, it'll go to your folks. If your folks aren't living, it'll go to your siblings. And then nieces, cousins, nephews, it just trickles down. Unless you assign a power of attorney of like a best friend or, a legal guardian, something like that. So definitely deal with the paperwork to um, show who's going to have that right to take care of you after you pass away.
So who does the investigation if you don't know who the next of kin is, right? So you have a person who passes
Hmm.
away and you can't find anybody who's related to this person. Is there a process to be followed to sort of identify next of kin?
Usually we check with been verified. State, not like those types of services. We also get a hold of the state and see if there's anything that the state has on this person, because we could also find out what people's social security numbers are, because sometimes you if you don't have this information already, there are routes that we can go to get this information. And we it's called due diligence, where they try everything possible to figure out who your next of kin is. And they have a specific timeline to get a response from anybody that they do find. So like for me, my son is my next of kin, and I have in my phone his name, his phone number, and right next to his name is next of kin. So if I'm ever found somewhere and they're able to get into my phone, they could find, his name and his phone number and next of kin.
And one of the things that you were talking about the other day that I kind of wanted to touch base on too, because I'm still kind of confused by how that works. But you were talking about how if somebody's not on the final document,
Hmm.
they don't have any rights or access. What was that signature piece of that final document?
Like the authorization.
Is it the authorization or is that the attestation? It was we were talking about it. You said it like if the wrong person signs that final document, like proof of death or whatever, then in the future it's like impossible to get those records.
Um, I guess it. I guess it can be. So, like, if there's a particular
It
per-
was at the time of death.
F, I don't,
Yeah,
I
so
don't
somebody
remember
has to sign
the
that
authorization.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to be a loved one, right?
Well, it usually always has to be the next of kin unless it's somebody that's been appointed by the next of kin to make those decisions.
And if their name isn't on the authorization as the person that's next of kin, nobody else in the family can make any decisions of
Mm,
anything like bank
mm,
accounts and stuff like that,
no,
right?
no. And like with cremated remains, the only people we release to are the people that are on that authorization. Because family could be at war with each other over who has the right to have those ashes back, and you could create some big problems if you give them to the wrong person. So we only deal with and talk to whoever is on that authorization.
And then when it comes time to sort of like the offering of remains,
Mhm.
and so you've done your process and sort of you're giving it to the family. One of the things you talked about a little before is the difference between a witness cremation and a
Mhm.
non-witness cremation.
Mhm.
Now, do not I was surprised that anyone would want to be there and observe their loved one be cremated. But after we've had that conversation, I'm looking back and like I could see some people.
Mhm.
So what's the difference between uh, a
A
witness
witness and a
versus a
regular.
non-witness?
Yeah. So a lot of our witnesses that we do are cultural and religious. Some cultures I wouldn't necessarily call it required, but they make it a part of the whole process where they watch their loved one go into the retort. And you know, some families like to lower the door and turn it on, and you know, do all that kind of stuff. But also we have people that would like to witness their person go in, so they know it's them. And we've had families want to come back after the whole process of the cremation and watch them get swept out and watch them get, um, watch their bones get, you know, pulverized. And so a lot of people want to be a part of that process too.
And one of the things that I also want to talk about a little bit is the difference between independently owned
Hmm.
places and those corporate monstrosities that are in the death industry.
Yes.
Because it's a different feel, you're treated
Hmm.
differently, and it's under the guise
Yeah.
of being cheaper, but they're usually not cheaper.
No,
And so you get these corporate-owned funeral homes that are no longer about the clients or
it's
no
all
longer
about the
about the
money.
decedent, it's
Hmm.
all about the money.
Right.
And how does a funeral home like the one you look for compete with that?
You know, I don't. A lot of people still look to the family-owned funeral homes. The one that I work for, we aren't about the money. We're about the care and the respect and you know treating the decedent with you know with dignity and stuff. And not one of the funeral directors that I work with are all about you know upselling and you know I'm gonna get you the biggest best casket. I'm gonna you know have these families pay all this money and stuff. And that's not what it's about. You know, corporations um can be um very money motivated, I guess, versus the care. But I personally have never worked for a corporation. So that um I don't I don't know if that, you know, is they're more money motivated or whatever. I just know what I work with and work for, and um, we're all about taking care of the decedent. Um, and so, like our direct cremation has the cremation, the transportation, the one copy of the death certificate. It comes with all these different things that's included in that price. But other funeral homes do more of like an a la carte. You know, they'll say, "Oh, well, our cremations are like they're only $900, but with an urn and with the transportation and with this and the additional death certificate and this and that, they like all the other stuff gets added on afterwards. So sometimes it's more expensive, whether they're another family owned or a corporation.
And if you get them in the door at 900,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for some companies that are interested in money to add all of those add-ons, knowing full well that the family probably doesn't have enough bandwidth to change funeral homes. They've already made the decision, the body's already
Right.
been transported,
Yeah.
and it's too late.
Because sometimes if you change your mind and go to a different funeral home, the original funeral home is still going to charge you for the transportation and for them to be stored at their location. It just depends on the funeral home. They're all different.
And the reason I bring this up is because I want people to understand how important it is to do your research
Mm-hmm.
and to do your due diligence
Mm-hmm.
beforehand.
Yeah. I actually recommend taking care of your arrangements yourself. Doing what you want to do. I mean, I did my paperwork and stuff, and I wrote on there, "Do not put a bra on me, or I will haunt you." And I put on there who I wanted to be my cremationist, and put me in and push the button. I put on there what dress I wanted to wear. What everybody should do is take care of everything themselves and what they want to do. Whether you want to be a bone and tissue donor, I don't, but that doesn't mean that um, somebody else might want to.
I've been guilted into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I definitely recommend just doing it yourself and saving your family and your loved ones and the people around you, the heartache of having to go down to a funeral home and be like, I don't know what they wanted, just to take care of it.
Yeah, because your family's grieving the loss of you, and
Right.
what better way to honor your family back than to
Mm-hmm.
provide them with, one less thing
Right.
to deal with.
If you're a veteran, have your DD 214 available.
Yeah, that's huge,
Yeah.
folks. Especially if you're going to get buried in a military cemetery.
100%.
You want to make sure you have that on standby,
Mm-hmm.
which I think this day and age most veterans do.
Yeah.
Just because it's surprising how many times in life you need that damn document.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, however, there's a difference between having that document and having it readily available in case.
100%.
So where people know where it is.
Yeah.
Because if you know where it is and you're able to access that on the front end, it just saves so much aggravation on the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and filling out some form of information sheet that has where you were born, um, your parents' names. Because, like, if I passed away, do you know my mom and dad's name or where I was born?
No.
No?
No.
Well, in the box in there, it has the booklet that I filled out that has all that information.
I know it's California, but I can't remember.
Fresno.
Fresno.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway.
And you've told me on more than one occasion what their names are, but with my memory, it's hard.
That's okay. So I wrote it down. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm also curious about like the sort of like the preparation piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because one of the things I think a lot of people don't understand is that in order to do the embalming piece and like the reconstruct, all that stuff has to be done by a funeral director, right?
Funeral director and embalmer.
Funeral director,
Yeah.
embalmer. So there's a difference between the two.
Yeah. So you could have somebody who's only licensed to be a funeral director and they aren't allowed to embalm. They have to be a licensed embalmer to do all of that. But it varies from state to state. Like in another state that I worked at a funeral home, I did restoration on people who died from like gunshot wounds or car accidents or whatever. And I'm not licensed for anything, and in that aspect and stuff. So every state is different. I can't do it here in Oregon, because Oregon has its own rules and regulations and stuff. But in other states, it's allowed. And um, I had an embalmer that came in and embalmed this individual that passed away in a rollover car accident, and he was ejected. And she came in and embalmed him and said, "Oh, Becca can do the restoration." I'm like, "Nah, what? No." And I did. And he looked amazing for his family and his service and stuff. But I can't do that in Oregon because it's not allowed.
And when you're talking about restoration and you're talking about preparation in that regard, it's restoration and preparation for viewings, right?
Yes,
And you almost need to be an artist
100%.
because it's not so easy as putting on a little rouge and you're show ready. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
steps involved
Yep.
to get somebody ready for that
Yep.
viewing.
There's waxes, there's putties, there's different types of glue. Decedents, we have our own specific makeup that's formulated for decedents. It's a little thicker than what somebody who's alive would use, um, and it definitely takes some special skill to figure out what you need to what you need to do, because when you have somebody who had what we call a cranial autopsy, where the scalp is cut and then the skull is cut, the brain is removed. When that gets sewn back up, you have like almost like a seam in the skin. And if this individual had a shaved head, you have to cover that seam up so the family doesn't see that. So I've put putty over that to so it just looks like um, flat skin. I've used like spray paint style, like the hair coloring spray stuff. I've sprayed on their hair to cover that up. So you learn a lot of tricks to make them pretty, and hopefully it doesn't nothing leaks while while they're in their viewing, because that's stressful. Like I used to do people's makeup and get them ready for their service, and I'd stick around and be like, "Do they look okay? Are they okay? Does family say they look okay?" I would stress until they said, "They look fine. You're okay." Because yeah, it's stressful.
And then in terms of numbers,
Mhm.
well, because one of the things I was fascinated by everything that we sort of talked about up until this point is uh, just how many people in a given week
Mhm.
are come through your doors. Because it was way more than I thought.
Yeah.
Because you don't even think about how many people that pass away on a daily basis.
And that's just one funeral home. I think there's 90 funeral homes in the Portland metro area. Yeah. And you have people on hospice, you have people who um die of random things, and you still have people who haven't even been found yet that are still out there waiting. So I think I did the math a few years ago. In the 14 years I've been in the funeral industry, I have probably seen about 60,000 people who have passed away, just in the various um, positions that I've done.
And with those 60,000, have any of them been like surprising or like just sort of like I didn't see this coming at all?
Like people I knew.
Not necessarily people you knew, because like you're talking about the other day, like sometimes you have to be very creative in the removal process
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think people realize how difficult it is to remove a decedent from wherever they died.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a process.
Yeah. because it could be anywhere um that you could possibly think of, at the bottom of a ditch, in the back of a semi truck, um neck up, like a hiking trail, like a, several mile hiking trail, or in their backyard in the shed, or and it's all um it's all random, like I had a gentleman that was out in was out in the middle of nowhere, and we had to, like, use, like, forest roads, you know? Um, and there are moments where we're doing the removal in public, during lunchtime, and, there's several people around filming everything, and, you have to keep your professionalism through the whole process, because you never know who's watching you, You never know, because a lot of times where like our adrenaline is flowing, and we're like going the wrong way on a freeway, or we're having to like do all these like crazy things to get to where the person has passed away, and the whole time you have to stay professional through all of that, because like you can go to a car accident, and the tow truck driver that's there to pick up the car is related to the person that passed away. Regardless, you have to stay professional through the whole thing. I have never gotten like choked up to where like I'm crying too, because you have to keep that professionalism. I think though, the one time that I did was at the Vancouver VA. The VAs around here are amazing with their veterans who pass away. And I had gone to the Vancouver VA, and this gentleman had passed. And as were the staff and the patients who were able to, were all walking out, and they're like processing behind me, holding candles and stuff as we're going out. And there was a band in the cafeteria, and the guy that was playing the trumpet, he's like, "Can you stop for a second so I can play taps? As you're walking out." And I got choked up in that moment, because that was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
And I want to go back to sort of like the beginning
Hmm.
piece, because one of the things I'm curious is about what happens in the moments immediately after death, and when somebody from the funeral home comes to take the decedent away. Is it true that every time somebody passes, the police have to be involved at some
No,
point?
no.
Okay.
So the police are not involved if somebody was on hospice care for more than 24 hours. Um, if they're under the care of a doctor. If then the police don't need to be involved if it was an unattended passing. If they fell, if it was like an unexplainable or suspicious, or if it was anything besides they were on hospice care, then yeah, you would need to call the police to come in. And they come in, they do they investigate the scene, they talk to the family and get like some kind of history of, like what's been going on the last couple of days, what kind of medication are they on, have they've been diagnosed with anything recently. They kind of get a history, and then from there, the medical examiner or coroner, depending on, what part of the world you're living in,
Yeah.
um, they're called, and they usually get a rundown from the officer, and they're like, I'm gonna go ahead and release this person and not take jurisdiction over and the continued investigation. So I'm gonna go ahead and release them. Go ahead and call whatever funeral home the family have chosen. basically. Or they'll say, this kind of sounds weird. I'm going to come out and take a peek. And then at that point, they can either transport the person to their location, or they can at that point say, um, we can go ahead and release. And then because they'll come in and they'll look at the scene, and they'll look at the medication they're on. They'll talk to the family, and yeah, a lot of times I worked with the investigators in Multnomah and Clackamas and Clark County, and all of them are very thorough. They're amazing, and or yeah, they're all really good.
We're blessed too in the fact that the medical examiners in Oregon have to have a minimum set of education and experience to be medical
Hmm.
examiners. Some states, you can be a medical examiner off the street,
Yeah,
which is scary.
yeah, it is.
And then
Yeah.
when it comes to like the medical examiner sort of signing off in that piece,
Hmm.
how often is there an autopsy? Because I was under the impression it was just sort of a given that it was going to happen, but I'm coming to find out that not everybody has an autopsy.
No, it's all based on what led up to and the aftermath of their passing. Um, some counties, if that person, obviously, you could tell that they committed suicide. Some counties will say, don't really need to do an autopsy. You know, if somebody potentially might have passed away from an overdose, they might just take a blood sample and go ahead and release them to the funeral home. Sometimes they take them back and they do X-rays, and they do the full they do the full, Y incision, full autopsy, or they just might do the cranial and just, remove the brain and look there. Every county is different. The pathologists in every county and state are all different. Some pathologists will even remove the testicles.
Interesting.
Yeah, and others are like, no, So every it's all everywhere's different.
I may have to put a provision in mine. Don't touch my junk, folks. Please. Like, I don't know. But then you also said something that was very fascinating to me too, because you said that there are times when an autopsy isn't performed,
Uh-huh.
yet the family wants one.
Oh, yeah.
And so there actually is a place that will do private autopsies.
There is private pathologists that will do private autopsies. They're not inexpensive, just because it does take a lot of work and a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise to do the pathology part of it. It's usually a 2 to 3 hour process, and so if the the county medical examiner, if they've released this person, and the doctor, their primary doctor says, oh, they had cancer, that's probably what they died from, and the family's like, we want to make sure. So they'll hire a private pathologist to do an autopsy, even though they've already been released by the county.
Have you ever seen an instance where a private autopsy was completed that changed the course of like an investigation? So they did like a private autopsy and they're like, this probably needs to be investigated by police.
I personally have not, because I'm not involved in the continuation of that part, like that pathologist. Because like I'll do the transportation, I'll take them to where they're doing it, I'll stick around until they do it, and then yada yada yada. But they don't tell me what they find. So, if I was curious later on, I probably could have looked at their death certificate and seen what they passed away from. But um HIPAA continues after death, so it's really none of my business what they pass away from. And yeah,
That's interesting.
I don't get told anything.
So HIPAA extends after death.
I believe 50 years is the general rule.
Huh.
So Yeah. So I don't like sometimes we ask well, do they have any infectious diseases or whatever, or some places I've seen they'll write what this person passed away from. But if us as transportation people, if we use universal precaution with everybody, we shouldn't care what they passed away from. And I've I've been yelled at before. It's none of my effing business what this person passed away from. I should be using universal care. So after getting yelled at in that moment, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't care what they passed away from. I'm going to use universal care, whether, it's a disease that's contagious or not. Everybody passes away from something, whether it's natural or it's a disease or it's. So I assume everybody has something, and I just protect myself.
And then the other piece of the process involved that was sort of like eye-opening with me was what you need to do to get a decedent to a different country.
Oh, yeah.
That's why.
When I said an apostille,
Yeah.
you're like, what the hell
Like,
is
what the
that?
hell is that? Yeah.
Yes. So there is a very thick red book that has um all the requirements for either a whole body or cremated remains to get to any country in this world. And it has the step by step everything that you need if it's birth certificate, death certificate, letter of non contagious diseases. But like if we have a decedent who is being sent to Mexico. We need the passport, the birth certificate. We need um, um, all of like the embalming and all this other stuff. We all need it translated from English to Spanish, and then we need to get a hold of the consulate and take all this paperwork to the consulate, and they have to do their own part of the paperwork, and then they give it back to us. Then we do another part of the paperwork, and then one of us drives it to the state to get an apostille. And I was explained to it as all of these companies got, or not companies, all these countries got together and said, okay, how are we going to authenticate paperwork so we can get people from one country to another? And they're like, let's do apostille, where all this paperwork comes to us and we look it over and be like, okay, that's legit. Yeah, we'll go ahead and okay that and do their little stamps of approval and give it back to you, and then that goes back to the consulate, and then it's usually 3-week process to do all of that.
And what do you do with the decedent in that time frame? How do you keep that person from decomping too much?
Usually, we do the embalming pretty quickly, after we get them into our care. And then from there, if we know we're going to have them in our care for some time, we usually put them in the climate control room, aka cooler.
Yeah. That's fair.
Use the proper
Uh-huh.
wording. Yeah.
And, and then in terms of like the paperwork and all that,
Mm.
are there pretty strict requirements on like the size of the box or the size of the casket that goes in the on the plane, if you will?
It Different airlines have different specifics. Some airlines won't body casket container combined won't take anybody over, I think, 500 pounds or 550 with everything combined. Um, and at that point, it would turn into more of like a type of ship out instead of on a regular um, commercial airline. Different airlines have different requirements and different locations they'll fly to. Um, so when we do get somebody in our care and family says, okay, we want them to go to Mexico City or Oaxaca or something like that, then we start calling around to all the airlines and be like, "Okay, do you fly into, Mexico City or whatever?" And, figure out that and when we call them, we say, "Okay, we have somebody who is under 500 pounds," and they're like, "Okay, yeah," we do that or we don't do that or whatever. But we have had people, who were um, more than the 500, pound limit, and we just have to figure out, which airline will allow it.
I would imagine a lot of your time is spent problem solving to meet the needs of the family.
100%.
Because one thing that I have noticed along the way is that, and this kind of goes back to what I talk about on this podcast all the time, but
Mhm.
how not even identical twins have the same life story.
No.
And so you really don't know what the person has been through on their journey in
Mhm.
life. And so, uh, and being open to creativity, because some people
Mhm.
have amazing requests.
Yeah.
And if you're looking back at the last few years, was there ever a moment where you saw a funeral procession or you saw a ceremony and you were like, that's creative and cool?
Yeah, so I love, like, the culturally different things, like, we'll have, like, somebody who is, Hindu, and, they'll come in and do all of these, like, ritualistic things and stuff as the person, it's just beautiful. All these different, like, cultural and religious things that different countries and stuff or different religions. I don't know how to put that, but just the different traditional things that people do. I love Native American services when they do drum circles. I love when a mariachi band, comes in and plays and stuff. And, like, just I love when families make the moment, personal, um, and, like, if a woman loved wearing red shoes, the whole family will walk in wearing red shoes, and so I love when, people, um, make it more personal for that person who passed away. I haven't had to do, like, the tattoo removal, when families, they want the person's tattoos. I've taken pictures of tattoos. I've done handprints and footprints. We actually did lip prints the other day. Um, and we put cremated remains into various things. I did a thermos once. We do jewelry and liquor bottles too. We so the whole point in doing what I do is just no judgment. Everybody has a reason for what they're doing. Like some people use the ash for tattoo ink too. Um, or
That's wild.
yeah.
That's wild.
So it's and, you can make diamonds too with people's cremated remains. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, right? Yeah.
Fascinating.
Mhm.
The whole tattoo removal piece has got my mind going in so many different directions.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's one of those things, like, I wish I knew the why, but
And you wanna interview somebody that does taxidermy, maybe you can interview somebody that preserves tattoos.
right? Now, are they pursuing to preserve the tattoo?
Mhm.
So, okay. So, I'm glad you clarified, because when you said tattoo removal, my thought went to, like, laser tattoo removal to
No.
remove a tattoo from.
No,
What you're
they're
talking about is they want you to cut out the tattoo
yes.
and preserve that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and dental gold removal is really not a thing. There aren't too many dentists that are, um, willing to do that. Yeah.
And the gold that they put into people's mouths is not the gold people are expecting.
Right. And it
It's
burns down
it's
too.
not worth what you think it is,
No.
folks.
Yeah.
They don't use pure gold
No.
in gold teeth
No.
because that will poison you. So, yeah, it's just a gold color.
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
With the exception of like some football players who do actually get the gold out of their teeth. But that's a
That's true.
different ballgame
Yeah.
altogether.
So, and a couple questions that people have asked is do people make noise after they pass away?
Yeah.
Some do, yes. Um, but that is because there is a little bit of air left in their chest after they pass. So if there's any pressure applied there, like I went on a call and the person was on the floor and we put our backboard down and we rolled them and then placed the board underneath and then strapped down the straps around their chest and their waist and their legs and they moaned when I cinched the chest strap and
That
sometimes
must have been freaky.
yeah, you're like, yeah, and family is there, so you're like, you can't be like, oh shit, what, you can't freak out. It's like, okay, that just happened, and you have to stay professional through everything, regardless of smells and conditions of the person, stuff that's laying around their room. I don't judge. I am involved in uh the most vulnerable moment of the ending of somebody's life, whether I don't care if you have matching underwear on either. We don't care about that. But we don't judge.
And along those same lines, though, because you're talking about, uh, what were we talking about? Um,
Where they make noise.
yes.
Yes.
What about involuntary movements where like the body just moves and you're like not expecting?
I've never had that, but that doesn't mean that's not a thing. I had this person who was laying on the floor and their arms were out um to their out, they were just out, and I had moved the arm to put their arms like this, and then because of the rigor mortis they went straight back, and he actually smacked me
Oh,
on my butt
oh
in
no.
that moment, and family was there and they laughed, like, "Oh my god, really?" But so that happens during the cremation process with the pressure and the heat and all of that. The arms will open up, or the legs will open up, but that's just because of the conditions that that's inside. They don't do that on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what about the importance of letting the funeral home know that they have a pacemaker?
Very important. So anything that has a battery should not be placed into the retort because they can explode. Um I don't really necessarily like glass going in the retort. I don't really, like ceramic. I don't even necessarily like leather going in to the retort just because that's just more stuff that needs to be processed through. But some families don't even know when their loved one has gotten a pacemaker. So even if they mark on the authorization, know that they didn't have a pacemaker, we always check. And they could be on this side, they could be on this side. Sometimes they have like pain pumps that are in their abdomen. So we check everything. I check for um hearing aids and earrings, and it's just stuff that could potentially be hidden.
And what about, do you find times when the family asks for like pins and screws from surgeries?
Hmm. Yeah, all the time. Yep. So, and there are times where I find things that the family um wasn't sure was like true. So I had an individual a while back that had talked about getting shot like years and years and years ago, and the bullet was still in there. So the family had said if that comes back after the cremation, can we have that back? And I wasn't told that that was the possibility of still being there,
Yeah.
So I went through the whole process and I found it, and I had asked the director, I'm like, were they shot? And he's like, oh my, yes, yes, the family had asked about that, and I'm like, well, here you go. It was still in there. And so yeah, sometimes I find things after the fact too, with the cremated remains that I didn't know were there either. So I don't judge.
So we've been at this for well over an hour. And I thought it would be an appropriate and interesting way to end with a flip a little bit.
Uh-oh.
So, since you've been listening to this podcast and
Uh-huh.
listening to all of these interviews, is there a question that you think somebody should have asked me that you've been dying to know the answer to?
Asked you?
Yeah. Like if you could ask me any question.
If I could ask you any
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Well, oh, wow, put me on the spot.
Right?
What the hell? Um, who who is the one famous person you would give anything to interview?
You know, if you would have asked me that question 2 years ago,
Mhm.
it would have been Maynard James Keenan,
Okay.
no doubt. Now it's a different story. Um, I don't think I would get the same level of interview from Maynard as I do some of my other guests.
Mm.
And while I really appreciate talking to musicians, I really like talking to musicians. Um, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
So instead of explaining that, I would say, like, if I could interview anybody, I would love to interview Daryl Davis.
Okay.
Daryl Davis is a jazz musician.
Mhm.
He's black. And its importance to his identity in the regards of his mission in life is to convert people from the KKK.
Yes. Yes.
And he leads his conversation with, how can you hate me if you don't even know me?
Exactly.
And when I first heard him say that,
Mhm.
it was so profound and so like inspiring that I would love to have a sit down conversation and not talk to him about the KKK, not talk to him about the racism,
No.
because everybody talks to him about that.
Right.
Nobody talks to him about his music. Like, my God, that man is talented.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about the amazing work he does in terms of getting rid of racism and bringing awareness to this problem in our country.
Right.
But nobody has interviewed him about his jazz. And I would love to just have a conversation with Daryl Davis about nothing but his music.
Yeah.
And what an interesting twist of a conversation that would be.
Mhm. So if you could interview anybody who's passed away,
Oh, man.
getting back into my line of work.
There's an obvious one, and then there's a not so obvious one. The obvious one
Mhm.
would be Nikki Jones's dad,
Yes.
because we had lined up that interview to happen the day after he passed.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, you know, I would have loved to have interviewed Kierkegaard.
Mm.
Ancient philosopher, not ancient, but a philosopher, um, just mind-blowing in terms of intelligence and the ability to sort of talk about the human condition,
Mhm.
and paved the way for so many conversations. I would have loved to sit down and just pick his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and another person like Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to interview Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's one of my favorite humans as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a good question. Yeah. So many people.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Becca, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to end this, but the way I normally end this podcast.
Yep.
Be kind, people. We all live in the same air. We all live in the same air. We all live in the same planet. We breathe the same air. And this place would just be a much better place if we treated everybody, alive or dead,
Yes.
with dignity and respect.